Shikhidhvaja said, Holy One, pray instruct me in such a way that it will be perfectly clear to me that the mind is non-existent. Kumbha has been teaching that there's only the Absolute. The Absolute is complete in itself, so why would it create anything? Why would it create a world? And Kumbha has replied, the truth is the world has never been created. The world is based on stories, empty words meant to entertain. There's only ever consciousness. And we've been told that thinking does not exist. And thinking is involvement with notions, with ideas, concepts. Do stories exist? Do stories have an existence? Are stories real? Well, that depends on our beliefs, which are themselves stories. A belief is about saying, this story is true and that story is false. It's quite arbitrary, really. Scientists try to find out stories which you can say are true. All they can do is come up with theories which allow us to describe things in different ways and which give us a certain degree of control over the environment. Kumbha said, O King, indeed there is not and there has never been an entity known as the mind. That which shines here and is known as the mind is indeed the infinite Brahman consciousness. It is ignorance of its true nature that gives rise to the notion of a mind and the world and all the rest of it. When even these are insubstantial notions, how can I, you, etc. be considered real? Thus there is no such thing as the world, and whatever appears to be is uncreated. All this is indeed Brahman. How can that be known, and by what? And Brahman is the pure experiencing. Brahman is the stuff that's going on. How do we know there's stuff going on? Because there's awareness that stuff is going on. This awareness and the stuff going on are not different from each other. This is reality. We tell stories about it. We say that it started so many thousands or billions of years ago. We say that it's going in a certain direction. We say that there are people in it, individuals, me, you. We're born, we die, we go to oblivion, heaven or hell, or get reborn. We create these stories. We create stories about gravity. We create stories about galaxies. We create stories about good and bad. We engage with these stories. We say some of them are true and some of them are false. We identify with these stories to the extent we can get extremely impassioned about getting others to agree with them. But there's only the one infinite Brahman. And the only way to know this for sure is to be aware of it. No words are going to explain it to us because it is self-evident. When you drop all the stories and come back to the pure experiencing, the concrete facts. Even in the beginning of the present world cycle, this world was not created. It was described as creation by me only for your comprehension. In other words, we might talk about creation, but this is just to facilitate certain discussions. In the total absence of any causative factors, all these could not have been created at all. This is where the stories of religion and science run aground. Religion and science seem to both believe that the universe created at a certain point. At one point there's no space, no time, and then another point there is space and time. It doesn't work. So nothing could have been created. Therefore, whatever there is Brahman and not else. It is all Brahman. It is not even logical to say that the Lord, who is nameless and formless, created this world. It is not true. When thus the creation of this world is seen to be false, then surely the mind that entertains a notion of such a creation is false too. The mind's what generates notions. It doesn't just generate notions, it creates attachment to these notions. We get attached to these notions, we invest heavily in them, we get emotionally attached to them. Mind is but a bundle of such notions which limit the truth. All notions limit the truth. I once said that to believe in God is to blaspheme God. Because to believe in God is to subject God to notions. You're limiting the infinite. You're limiting the unlimitable. Our notions limit the truth, but then division implies divisibility. When the infinite consciousness is incapable of division, there is no divisibility, and hence there is no division. There is no separation between the Absolute and creation, because there's no creation. Creation is ideas we have about the Absolute experiencing. How can mind, the divider, be real? It's mind in the form of the cognitive process. It's a way of describing things. It's a way of relating to things in a particular mode. It's not right, it's not wrong. It's just a way of relating to things. It's like believing that there's only one mode of relating to things. It's like believing there's only one kind of love. So you might say the love you have for your partner is the only true kind of love. But what about the love for your parents, love for your siblings, love for your pet, love for your friends, love of art? No, there's only one kind of love. Every other kind of love is false. We've got lots of different modes of relating, but we've got a tendency to want for there to be just one mode, one truth. Whatever appears to be here is perceived in Brahman by Brahman, and such perception is, by courtesy, known as the mind. Well, that's a nice way of putting it. Brahman is courteous. It's more like indulgence, I think. It's like a parent who indulges his child's fantasy. The child has an imaginary friend, and the parent will ask, well, how's your friend today? And they'll have a conversation about the child's imaginary friend. The mind is allowed to run with its stories. It's only Brahman which is doing any experiencing, but the mind creates its imaginary friend, which is the ego, creates stories about it, creates stories about where the ego lives, this is the world, and it's just Brahman all the time. But the mind is indulged, it gets upset, it gets caught up in sorrow and pain and suffering, but it doesn't seem to learn its lesson very often. It's always got the option of returning to Brahman, of growing out of its stories. It is the infinite consciousness alone that is spread out as the universe. Why then call it the universe? It's the infinite consciousness. In this plane or dimension of infinite consciousness, whatever slight appearance there seems to be is but the reflection of consciousness in itself. Hence there is neither a mind nor the world. I've said before that this way of describing things as reflection and consciousness could be understood as thinking about it, as reflecting about it. When we reflect on things, we move away from things, we get caught up in our reflections. But everything is happening in consciousness, and we can come back to our own essential consciousness. We become conscious of consciousness.